Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Krankendau is bringing you another Cosmonarchy cast. I am very excited to be gaming with you guys today, showing you guys some cool Zerg versus Zerg, and I'm looking forward to this particular matchup. It's going to be some of our top players in the community. We've got ArbuzBudesh, a recent Zerg Ascendant, previously played as Protoss, and now plays a little bit of everything. He played random in the last weekend wage, made it all the way to the final. It was pretty cool. He is our Maroon Zerg player. And in the bottom right, we've got Krankendau rocking out with a very cool color. I'm going to say this is Aquamarine. Yes, Aquamarine Zerg. Of course, a top 4 in the last Acropolis, but now sees himself as the lower seed in this head-to-head just because Arbuz has been on the grind so much. I feel like Krankendau will return and at least jockey challenge for that spot. Of course, we do so many weekly, bi-weekly tournaments and such now. We have another weekend wage opening up this weekend, actually. It will be on the 20th, I do believe. Yes, that is correct. The 20th of December. So if you're watching this now on the 16th, you have 4 scant days to sign up. You can sign up and get there, be square, etc., etc. You can be a victor. We're going to have Hapsea returning to us, actually. We did show him in a recent-ish cast. I've got another one with him featured lining up a little bit later on. So hope you guys are excited about that. We got lots of cool casts going on. I think maybe I'll even consider casting an Ascozi match in the somewhat near future. But we'll see. We will see, guys. We will. All right, the Zets are out for Krankendau, but Arbuz is already in his opponent's base. They both went for a pool. A pair of quads hatching, showcasing their adrenal frenzy. Whenever they attack, they gain a little bit of movement speed. Now, that secondary Larvosk or secondary Kagran was supposed to be a Larvosk, and Krankendau stopped mining Vespene out of an abundance of caution, and that kind of threw him off the initial timing there. So he's going to get that up in a little bit. It looks like Arbuz is thinking about putting down his second Kagran as well. Perhaps expectantly, the more aggressive player is actually a little bit behind in terms of the economy, in terms of the larva development, but it looks like that's going to be leveraged for tech, as Arbuz is going for a Hydrith Den as his follow-up. So rather than have a more larva to make more workers and make more military, Arbuz is going to delay his additional larva and instead try to get to a technical advantage. This map is Blackwater Bastion. It is a 4-spawn map by BiddyB, who we recently celebrated a birthday bash birthday. It's pretty cool. And that's actually doubling back. Unexpected. Arbuz is going to be able to pop one of the Zets. And you can see I'm just trying to trade a little bit here to whittle down the Zether cores, but stay abreast, stay away from those quas. And, pushing him away, pulling him away, and Krankendau doesn't actually know, it looks like, where his opponent's base is. So he's going to be take a little bit longer to get over there. Guys, I've taken off the overlay for the donations for now, but we are still raising money for our next show match, for our weekend wage, prize pools, etc. If you want to donate towards any of the ongoing stuff, I mean, you can just subscribe on Coffee if you want to do a monthly donation. You can do one-time donations. It's split between myself and Veek7, who's been hard at work on ranked mode and fraud launcher stuff and all sorts of all manner of things. But you can also donate directly to the competitive prize pools, if you will. Money goes towards show matches with pros and influencers, I guess you could say. YouTubers, the content creators is probably a more reasonable term. And then, the other stuff that it goes towards is the weekend wages that we do have, those bi-weekly tournaments. Streamlabs.com/Pronogo for that. Alrighty, we've got a bit of a surround, a bit of a flank for Arbuz. I feel like with the way that the Zether cores are coming in to really frustrate Krankendau's approach, that looked like a fight that mathematically should have been better for our lower Zerg player, shall we say, our bottom right Zerg player. But Krankendau is struggling a little bit here. He does finally escape with his Ovaleth from that position, and his one Zether core scout pops in here just in time to see what was going on with the Hydrith tech. Unfortunately, the Izira core bounces still end up claiming that Ovaleth, and well, Krankendau's going to be a little bit in the dark about what the next move is. I believe he did scout the Hatrosk on the way, so it feels like Arbuz has already taken some control in the game, achieved larval parity for now. But the Hydrith Den is done for Krank. The Vornath is done as well. 11 Izira cores are on the way. And we will have a macro hatch here for Arbuz to try to leapfrog over his opponent's larva. But I think Krankendau is going to be keeping pace with another Larvosk. The only question is, can he hold the attack? And I think the answer is a decided yes. I mean, you just see how many units he's produced. Arbuz has a little bit of an opening here, an aperture to take an economic lead. But instead, he's going to try to jockey for a little bit of more aggressive positioning. But Izirikor versus Izirikor feels like a bit of a slap fight. You're not going to be able to make meaningful progress through them. That's actually something that if you want to stick to Izirikor as your sort of bread and butter for the front line, you really benefit in this matchup from adding a Zor use, which does require a different tech structure, but gives you that armor rend when they take damage. It's pretty interesting. For the composition, I feel like it ends up working out pretty nicely. But his damage is decidedly going to come from static defense. We've got 3 circuits mutating. Those are going to be the Sunken Colony equivalents here in Cosmonarchy. And you are going to see a pretty easy hold here from Arbuz. I really don't think he's in much danger at all. The Hydra count is somewhat deadly for the Izirikors, but it can't get any purchase onto the circuits. And so Krankendau is actually maybe overextending here a little bit. So a lot of his Izirikors bleeding out towards the top. The IZs from Arbuz pushing forward, seeing what they can do, but now they've stretched out farther from the static defense. And so it was an overextension from Crank and then an overextension from Arbuz to allow Crank to solidify the containment. From this point onward, you do want to consider that ski-backed, but that's not who's making it. The ski-backed is currently being gestated by ArbuzBudesh, who does have that one Zethrakor spotting for that expansion timing. He knows he's actually got everything he needs here. Doesn't know that he's got an 11 worker lead or so, but he knows that he's getting there. He's getting there. Anti-drop static defense coming up online in the main, and I'm sure there's going to be a Khaz'Trith at some point as well. Looks like Krankendau is abandoning the containment, spreading out his scouts, getting his usual antics up. This is something that Krankendau is really known for. I think it's what powered him to some significant success going into that Acropolis season, Acropolis number 3. And it just feels pretty satisfying for... he must be so confused, like, what? Why are my units automatically attacking my own egg? Is there a bug? And well, there was a burrowed bug, if you want to call a Zethrakor a bug. More like a dog, isn't it? Comment below the animal you think most accurately represents the Zethrakor. Dingo, maybe. So, yeah, I do think that Krankendau, as a player, like narratively speaking, a lot of his power is sourced from his ability to anticipate what's happening and have a lot of like breadth in knowledge. So he plays a lot of games. He grinds a lot. He strategizes. He plays single player even to do some practice. He does a lot of stuff. He really does live and breathe the game when he's at the apex of his power. And this little advanced scouting here from Krankendau is going to show him that Skithrakors are on the way. Now, he already has one Spraith inside the main base. Looks like he's setting up for another, as well as the Tethvith Swamp, the Apex node, morphing. And that's another Claws catching and slowing down those Skiths on the move. Let's see what Krankendau's response is. He's not actually cycling his Hydras over there, not just yet, relying instead on the static defense, even though it is a little bit on the limited side. That's the second Spraith inside the main base, and he's got some coming up here in the natural as well. And that's going to be Spraith Circuit. I'm guessing there's going to be yeah, that'll likely turn into a Spraith in the middle there. So he should be insulated versus the Skithrakors. Not in the sense that they won't get any damage done, but they will have to trade for it, right? And so I think that's enough for Arbuz to think, okay, I'm going to just sit out here with these Skiths, sit down, sit tight, take, I have the advantage, I have the tempo. I'm going to take the opportunity now to push into a third base and push across the map. Another Quaz Scout defeated. Krankendau is well aware that he is soon to be under attack. He's going to mutate some more Teths of his own. We are at that Tetzoricor timer. I feel like overall, when you see the static defense that is pretty late here to the punch, it feels like Krankendau is maybe under the pump a little bit. The Skithrakors are actually going to help out a bit as well, trying to clear out a lot of the chaff, and the focus fire is just not there on these Tetzoricors. There's so many of them. I think Arbuz is shaping up to have his own victory party here pretty soon. Whence cometh the damage for the things that have all of this lifesteal? You need to be able to out-DPS them, and it looks like some of them are starting to fall apart. The Droleths are evacuated. We've got a Circuit very wounded and bloodied. It looks like most of the air units went down, only one Skithrakor staying alive for Arbuz. So maybe there's barely a hold happening. The static defense structure in the back really helped out, like, massively. It would have popped there if Arbuz hadn't microed a bit, but really, really good. If that Circuit had been a Spraith, I honestly think the whole fight is different. There's so much that influence. That's really big. So Arbuz maybe not quite sinking his Tetzoricors into the correct locations. Also, it really helped Crank that his Tets finished. I think if those Tets had already been there, Arbuz might have reconsidered his angle of attack. But because they were in the middle of mutating, he didn't know if those were Bactylisks. He didn't know what they were, so he just took a gamble, made it happen. So pretty interesting situation to find himself in. Now, don't get it twisted. Arbuz still in the lead. He's adding an Ulgorg, right? The mutation of the Shroud that we didn't even necessarily notice him make earlier. And he will be adding some Lakes. Probably, if I had to guess, his next little bout of minerals will be towards Zorius, so he can make Ultra Cores and have even more lifesteal in his composition. But he's mostly harvesting minerals, or Vespene right now from his third base. Only a little bit of mineral harvesting happening in the moment. One lonely Iziricore on patrol, and just in case there is some sort of pivot towards a third base for Crank. But there is no pivot. There is no such pivot. Instead, it's going to be a fourth for Arbuz at 12 o'clock. Now, it is sighted by the one Quasilisk here and bodyguarded by an Iziricore, but a bunch of Zethicores were just made. I feel like that makes me think Krankendau wants to go for some run-by, some split attacks, maybe see if he can do something with those expendable units since he is so under the pump economically, where he's down a base, soon to be down 2 bases. As soon as Arbuz saturates that third base, it'll be a more complete economic victory for him. Krankendau has reasonable larva, very, very good larva production. So we're not worried about him being able to spam out a bunch of units, even if it means that he's spending some of his larva on those tasks. He could definitely get away with doing that. Both Zerg players a little bit in the dark about what each other are doing, but especially Krankendau. He only really knows that there's a base at 12 o'clock coming. I don't think he ever scouted this third base, but he will reveal and announce that he is loudly leaving his front door, and the Quas at the 3 o'clock position, still guarding in case there's something else coming. Yeah, indeed, we are going to see the Zorius be made. I'm sure those will be turned into Ultra Cores. Also really interesting, the Zozark is on the way, and we will have those Gorgs come out. So, yeah, it feels like Arbuz is getting ready to, avenge his previous attack force. He's assembling everything that he might need for a total tech crunch. He's absolutely, in the lead when it comes to technicals. So Krankendau's going to need to take a pretty big fight here. Now, there's some things that he still has, which is double the army size, just about. And he definitely has some meaty frontline units. But that's a Khaz'trith-empowered set of Lakes. So every time you see this yellow overlay, it does mean that the Lakes, in this case, can fire extra projectiles. And yeah, they deal half damage, but it's still pretty good. Still extra projectiles. So pretty good there. Now, he will go ahead and cancel out 12 o'clock, kill it out with those Zets, as I predicted in the earlier stages of this commentary. And now we're going to be seeing Krankendau try to jockey for position around the third base. Remember, his own third base, it's not even done yet. It's a quarter of the way complete. Long ways to go now. 3 Ovalettes being made by Crank. I don't know if he wants to go for some sort of big swing, big pivot, big drop into the main base. That could certainly cause some confusion, but Arbuz looks like he's getting ready to finish this off. This feels like it's writing on the wall. We've got Zozark technology unlocked, so the Zarkavricore is coming. I don't think we'll see any Zobrialisks. Those are the upgraded Lakes, but not necessary for what Arbuz is up against right now, it feels like, although they would be really good at dealing with the Tetzoricor. That much feels pretty undeniable. Maybe that's already been mathed out, though, and I've been proven a fool. Krankendau adding Droleths for his third base, but it's going to be a while before that's operational. Meanwhile, Arbuz happily mining with that extra base advantage despite no worker lead. And, of course, is just scaling up his tech, getting more Zorius. He doesn't have any Ultra Cores, but the Tetzoricors will be able to stay alive for pretty long. And, yeah, now we've got the Zarks out. And the Zarks, I feel like, are just going to end this fight pretty quickly. Let's see if Krankendau can prove us wrong, though. He's engaging and trying to break all of the Tets as soon as he can. The armor end is real, and this southern flank is going to collapse completely. We'll keep selected those Zarkavricores to see if they get a real challenge in this fight. But I feel like the front lines are not even holding up versus what Arbuz has on the ground, let alone the 7 Zarks that are still alive as we speak. Only one of them has regressed into a Gorgorcore, it looks like, or maybe 2. Yeah, that's it. So he's still got a very potent Air Force, complete with the humongous amount of ground army that is still intact. And look at that beautiful gore pile at the end of the fight. Always something that I feel like Cosmonarchy does very nicely, especially when we get even more custom corpse graphics, it'll look even better. Arbuz actually made the Gorgorcore corpse a long time ago. Some people don't know that, but that's pretty good. I like it. So a lot of sprays were made for it to defend against the air push, which makes a lot of sense. Can a ground army be assembled in time to save this third base for Krankendau? This feels like an all-in play if he loses the third. And it looks like right now he's going to extend play. He's going to push Arbuz back. And Krankendau only losing a couple of his defensive structures here to those Ether Cores. But even then, it should be just fine. So his third base mines continuously. The one Ether Core from him earlier has killed multiple Drolets so far. Wow. That's pretty good in the chaos of the map, in the bedlam that we just witnessed. We still have no fourth base for our Maroon Zerg in the lead right now. And his Orca Shroud is on the way for Krankendau. The defender's advantage of those static defense structures seems to be paying off dividends. I actually thought that third base would just get mulched, but thankfully Krankendau was able to secure himself that extra base. I want to point out, these are 2,000 mineral fields, and they're already depleted in the main. That's to show you just how significant the investment in workers that has been, where he's been on 2 base for a very long time compared to his opponent. Arbuz still mining from not yet depleted mineral fields in his main base. Part of that, of course, being that Krankendau has more workers, and the fourth base is established. It looks like he might be thinking about taking bottom left. Natural, and tier 2 is about a quarter of the way complete, so Krankendau looking good there. Arbuz has a lot of minerals in the tank that he hasn't actually spent. This has happened to Arbuz in the past. There have been some times where that's occurred. Now, a couple of those Arcade Cores are going to come down and clean up the 6 o'clock position. Looks like they're chasing after the Ovolets right now, and Arbuz may not have actually wanted that. We'll see, though, because right now he's diving forward with another army, and that feels like the Hydras and the Bactyls. Oh, the Ultra Cores are here, though. I don't know. That might be enough to seal the deal. I think right about now is when you would say, okay, the army is still big, the army is still life-stealing, and there's not that much left here for Krank as they sink into his fourth base. I'm guessing the replay doesn't actually serialize their intended... Yeah, like this guy's got 4 kills. That probably didn't happen, now that I think about it. But it does look like this is all synced, and Krankendau is dealing with the fact that he's just lost his fourth base. So something went down around the time that Tier 2 happened. You know, it was a flicker in the universe. Zerg aren't supposed to be able to make Tier 2. That's impossible. And then, you know, the replay gave up, apparently. We'll speed up a little bit to see, because these armies are still fighting. Yeah, it looks like Krankendau's going to call GG, and Arbuz says LMAO. Well, we say LMAO, Arbuz, because we didn't see your epic army at the end. But we did see that Krankendau was adding his Tier 2. It just wasn't quite able to make it happen. And I wonder if there is some kind of lesson in that, because he was behind the 8-ball economically, in terms of map tempo, in terms of tech progression. I think leveraging Tier 2 in that situation is probably the most difficult time you can do it. In a Zerg mirror match, anyway. Arbuz and Krank have both told me, well, I guess it was mostly Arbuz. Arbuz has told me that ZVZ is a race to the Teth. We saw how good the Teth Zora Core can be in that match. We'll see. Maybe somebody will come up with some interesting counters in the meantime. Apologies about the scuffed ending there on the replay, but we saw most of the game just fine, and it was pretty impressive stuff there. As Krankendau GG's out, we'll have to see if game number 2 between these two, because there's a second game that I'll cast later on. That's played a few days later. I'll select that game and tell you guys all about it going forward. But you'll have to stay subscribed. You have to tune in to future games as well and see what's going on there. So GG's. Peace.